Regan Hagar, who's a very close friend of mine, who plays in Satchel, which is, I don't know if Satchel's been released over in Japan yet, but they're released over in the United States. But Satchel is basically Sean and Regan from Brad and two other members. And with help of my producer friend Dennis Herring, we just started putting together these records and using our own money, using my money to start out with, and then eventually playing the stuff for Sony and having people get excited about it. All the deals that we've cut are all one-offs, which is a very exciting thing for the bands and for myself in terms of one, not really wanting to get in the responsibility thing of saying, okay, you should sign to this label for 7 albums or whatever, but this is more of like, we'll put a record out and let it get out there. It's word of mouth is everything these days. People can find out about your music, and if this is the right place for you to be 2 years from now, great. I'd love to make records with you, and if it's someplace else, then all the power to you. I'm making money. I've got my own thing going on. This is I'm doing this because I love your band and I want good things to happen for you, and that may be with me, that may be with someone else, but I'm interested in helping to change the standard procedures of the record company business. I think there's a lot of really sort of bogus ways that record companies deal with young bands that do not necessarily promote music and camaraderie and all the things that really help to make long-term, bands work out. All right, we'll see you. Thank you very much.
I was wondering, you may have touched on this in your answer just now. You may have answered the question just to set the record straight. Bands like you and Nirvana sort of defied the star system, sort of stayed true to your own sense of integrity and achieved success on your own terms. And he was wondering, do you extend the helping hand to younger aspiring bands like that because you think the system still is working against them?
Oh yeah, I think the system is working. I don't know if that's my sole reason, for doing it. I have a vested financial interest in making this label work. I always, it's definitely, can we help each other? But I definitely see a lot of ways in which the record business is, one, screwing itself in the sense that it's set up in a way that these big, huge deals and a lot of business sort of transactions that have to take place right at the front end of when these bands start coming out are very detrimental. When you've been a band for a year and all of a sudden you're forced to make decisions like, okay, if you guys make $1 million, how do you split it up, and who's the main guy in the band, and all these sort of trials that you have to go through that a lot of bands can't survive. A lot of bands that are really great bands, and a lot of bands that are really, they don't even know what they are. They're just playing music, and suddenly they have to make all these sort of heavy-duty business decisions that are going to affect them for the next 7 years. And I think that the idea of having more artists sort of be a buffer between younger bands and help try to find younger bands and sort of be there for them for the first year or two when they're sort of starting to develop, and when they're ready to kind of go and cut their own deals, then that's fine. But that there is this sort of big brother attitude that and luckily we were involved in people in the record business pretty much from the beginning. In terms of people that we now are still working with at Sony. Michael Goldstone, Michelle Anthony, who are exceptions to the rule in the record business for the most part, and who are very good to us. But even then, there was no band that we could look to that said, here's what your main, here's what your real obligations are. It's to each other and to the music, and don't worry about signing a deal right now. You've all been working jobs for the last 8 years. Don't quit your jobs yet. Just keep playing music, and the deal's going to get sweeter, and you guys are going to get better, and you're going to be in more control of what's going on around you, and the big advance that you think is going to be the dream that you're going to get is not shit. It's a loan. It's not even a great loan, and there's just a lot of real common sense kinds of things that a lot of bands don't get sort of told in the beginning, and even your lawyer that you hire is not necessarily going to tell you. Lawyers are their relationship with the record companies is a very sort of symbiotic relationship, and they're very much paid a lot of money. You know, a first band getting signed to a record company, and you can spend $20,000 just getting the legal fees paid. I mean, that you've already spent 20 grand. You haven't sold a record. You haven't played a note on in a studio before, and you've already spent $20,000, or you've already and you're going to get an advance that you're going to split up, and and suddenly you're $250,000 in debt, and you haven't done shit yet. I mean, that's the situation that we got into very early on, and it's just not the most functional way of helping bands, and it's just not. From a records company standpoint, I think this is the trend in the future, is that there's going to be some more of this sort of satellite, smaller boutique type labels that sort of help bands come up in a low key way, and when they're ready to do their own thing, that they'll have achieved that over a longer period of time, and they're going to be stabler, and they're going to be groups based not on just one individual, but real groups that are really fundamental to what rock is, in my mind, in terms of the diversity and the community. By the way, Critters Buggin', which is a band I don't want to forget, is the last band that I did forget. But that Critters Buggin' is Matt Chamberlain, who played drums with us for a while, who used to be in Edie Brickell, and Brad Hauser, who was the bass player, and John Bush, who was the percussionist for Edie Brickell, and a crazed saxophone player named Skerrick, or sometimes known as Nalgas Sin Carne. That's butt cheeks without meat in Spanish. And they have a record out on Loose Groove too, which is a very crazed, sampled, instrumental, jazz, funk odyssey, which is a pretty exciting record. Yeah, I will have Maki send those to you, all the releases.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. We had the 4 of them already out in the United States, and only 2 more to be released, so we'll send them to you, and you can check them out. No problem.
The question about American rock as a whole, what do you think of the respective approaches, the respective attitudes of REM and Sonic Youth?
Well, there's certainly ones that we've tried to emulate, for sure, in terms of, when you look at a band like REM or Sonic Youth, who have been, I've seen Sonic Youth play, for a lot. Probably, I think, actually one of our first shows was probably with Sonic Youth in Green River. So they've obviously been around and been in the same entity and kept their heads about the business end of it and about their integrity, and obviously are going to be around for a long time because of that. And same with REM. Basically they stayed together and continued to work it out, which is, again, that's the age-old sort of theory that if you keep renewing your relationships with your band and keep working it out like you would with your family, that good things happen. So bands like that, and then even on a longer term, bands like the Grateful Dead or whoever, bands that are now it's almost the image of the Grateful Dead and the idea of going to their shows is even more, it's gone past the music now to where it's really they're making a political statement. I mean, it's like their influence on America is huge in terms of what they represent. I mean, they represent a way of life that's very important for people to understand. That's if you're you can be very conservative and right wing and at the same time you have these the Grateful Dead, which is just it's great to see that lifestyle represented so boldly, and I think that's an element of what we're involved in that I definitely am conscious of.
Going down a I'll just talk about music being the first priority, commitment to music, commitment to the band, the concept, or whatever. Unfortunately, however, musicians are given reason to think about other things, become concerned with other factors other than the music. Mm-hmm. And classic example, I guess, the most tragic example would be a Kurt Cobain, who let the non-musical side overwhelm him. Is that a tragedy that you personally had to come to grips with?